good evening, everybody. We're going to start our traffic council meeting for October 17th. We'll start with introductions. I'm David Kozis. I am the transportation coordinator from the Department of Public Works, the traffic council chair. At the beginning of the meeting, let's see, I see Captain Devine from the Traffic Bureau, Isaac Prezant, our traffic engineer. We have our alternate citizen representative, Margot Schoenfelder. We might be joined by our citizen rep, Mitch Fishman, later on in the meeting. We might also be joined by our fifth member of traffic council, which would be one of our city councilors. And we also have Danielle Delaney, our clerk, and I see Councilor Leary at the beginning of the meeting from Ward 1. And so we'll go right to our first item of the evening. All right. Okay. So our first item of the evening is TC 2424. It's Transportation Engineer Adrian Ayala, Director of Transportation Operations Ned Codd, Traffic Council Chair David Kozis, Traffic Engineer Isaac Prezant, Councilor Downs, Councilor Greenberg, and Councilor Leary, requesting a discussion and possible action to change the official parking regulations on Nonantum Place, the section of Charles Bank Road between St. James Street and Center Street, and potentially Jefferson Street, Russell Road, and Maple Street. This discussion is likely to include whether to remove or modify the current parking meter zones on Charles Bank Road and whether to modify the resident-only permit zones on Nonantum Place and Charles Bank Road in some way, with a goal of improving consistency and on-street parking availability to residents of Russell Road, Charles Bank Terrace, Orchard Street, Jefferson Street, and other streets in the immediate neighborhood. So this item, we had a thorough discussion, a long discussion last month at our traffic council meeting. We were able to present 3 different options, and there was general support for option 3, which was the idea of creating a new parking district in this neighborhood. So we took that and we fleshed it out more. We took in comments from the meeting, as well as other comments that we've received over the years from residents on Jefferson Street and on Orchard Street. And we tried to come up with something that we think is more consistent and, has, better equity among the residents in the neighborhood. So I'm going to present it first, and then we're going to open it up for public comment, and then we'll go to members of traffic council and city councilors. Okay, so starting with the current regulations that we have on streets in this neighborhood. Okay, so this is a map that, and you see all the red, everything in red on all of these streets means that there's no parking along that side of each of these streets. Okay. Then we have on Jefferson Street in pink, an area that's only a 1-hour limit for most of the day. So the residents on Jefferson Street have only really been able to park for 1 hour all these years on their street. We have then Nonantum Place that in these areas shown in blue are resident permit parking only, except for Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. So only the residents of Nonantum Place would be able to park there. Then we have on this whole stretch of Charles Bank coming all the way down in orange, a zone that's resident permit only at all times. So no one else could park on Charles Bank Road, only the residents of Charles Bank Road or their visitors. Then we have these metered zones. We have 6 meters, parking meters and public meters, and then 2 more meters that we find are very, very underutilized compared to almost any other meter in the city. And then we have Russell Road, which sort of spurred this discussion this time around, shown in green, which there's no restrictions on either side of Russell Road. Then we have Maple Street up here that has no restrictions along most of Maple Street, and then part of Maple Street does have a restriction. And then we also have William Street and Orchard Street and Charles Bank Terrace. All of these, there's no parking for these residents who live on these streets. Charles Bank Terrace is a private way. All the rest are public ways. So that's what we have right now in the field, every street having a different restriction. So every street has a different restriction in this neighborhood. Some residents are just not able to park on any street anywhere in their neighborhood right now. So we started to think about having a neighborhood parking district or a managed parking plan in this neighborhood. We have been over the years approving parking districts in different places in the city. I think we have 6 of them now in different villages. The biggest one is in Newtonville that started in 2013. We have other parking districts that we started to think, instead of street by street at Traffic Council, in 2013, City Council gave Traffic Council the authority to think more comprehensively in a group of streets instead of each street individually. So they've been very successful, I think, over the years in solving a lot of different problems. Every area has different issues. Having a parking permit allows the residents who live there to be able to park all day. Does slow traffic when you have a few more cars parked on the street. I think it's really important that we're recognizing that we're trying to provide equity among all the different taxpayers in this neighborhood. And at the same time, design it in a way that we're protecting the neighborhood from too much commuter or employee parking. So that's what we try to do. And so this is the proposal that we're going to be hopefully commenting on and moving forward with if it's agreeable. This would be a new parking district in this neighborhood. All the areas shown in red where you don't have parking now, you still would not have parking, still no parking anytime. The areas shown in red, all the same areas that you can't park now. The difference is that now we would be having a consistent set of parking regulations on all these different streets. So more fair to the residents who live there, easier to enforce. Instead of every street having a different restriction, we would be moving hopefully toward a setup where all the streets in this neighborhood have the same parking restriction. That's the areas shown in purple. So the restriction would be, and we came up with this after the last meeting where we had a couple different options and a good discussion. There seemed to generally be support for the idea of requiring a permit to be able to park between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. in any of the areas that are shown in purple, right? And then after 11 a.m., anyone would be able to park there. The idea being, try to make it easier for the residents to have their visitors come, et cetera, but still, not have a situation where the streets are filled up with commuters who most of them would not be, they would, already be there before 11 a.m., right? So let's see, I have a little note for some of these streets. William Street, there's a couple houses on William Street right here. You can't park on either side of William Street. So what we've been doing across the city when we have these kind of neighborhood parking districts is if you live on a street that's very narrow or that doesn't allow parking on either side, to be able to let those residents get a permit to park on a nearby street. So presumably these couple houses on William Street, if they want, they would be entitled to get a permit to park probably on Jefferson Street. Or they could just park there after 11 a.m. if that's what we go with. Maple Street up here. Right now, there's only this small stretch of Maple Street where you can't park on the south side. Other than this, you could park on both sides of Maple Street. And we've seen this, lately become a problem with new construction happening on Maple Street. This is sort of going down the hill down to Nonantum Road. So sort of separate from this whole parking plan, we would look to restrict parking on the south side of Maple Street. And we're not really looking to add Maple Street into this plan right now. We could add it later, or we could add it now if there's a strong reason to do that. Charles Bank Terrace, that's this area right here. It's a narrow road, it's a private way, right? All the other streets are public streets. Charles Bank Terrace is a private way. So there's special regulations that we need to think about for Charles Bank Terrace. We're not recommending including Charles Bank Terrace in this parking district in this phase. Since it's a private way, they could come later on if they have unanimous support among all the property owners along the street. They would be able to join the plan later if they want to. Then Russell Road sort of started this whole thing, like I said. We would be changing the restrictions on Russell Road to give them resident permits to park on their street between 9 and 11 in the areas on purple. The green is the west side of Russell Road. We're not proposing right now to have any restrictions on that side of the street. And the reason that we're suggesting that is because we've heard all along that nobody's parking on that side of the street anyway. And if we do put in some kind of restriction, we would need to figure out a way to post signs there. So if there is no restriction, we don't need to post the signs, and we don't think that anyone's going to park there anyway. So if it comes to pass that people are starting to park on that side, we would be able to address that later in some way by putting in a restriction. And then Orchard Street's the same as William Street, where you can't park on either side, but as part of a more comprehensive neighborhood parking district, they would be able to get a permit to park on Charles Bank Road. And I want to point out that we are extending the Charles Bank Road resident parking district area because we are recommending to remove 6 of these meters that are underutilized and use all that space as just an extension of the public public parking or by permit between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Okay, and there's one little section of Jefferson Street that I noticed was kind of confusing in terms of whether parking is allowed there or not. So and it seemed to me like it was a safe and good place to allow parking. So this right here, is the only place that we would be, I think, changing the restriction from no parking to allow parking. It's only in front of, I think, 1 or 2 houses right there. And we could talk about that as we go forward. So this is the most important slide. This shows the idea. So again, I see a lot of advantages to moving to this new concept. We didn't go with option 1 or option 2 from the last meeting, which were a lot less of a change. But we have moved, sort of fleshed out this option 3, which allows more parking opportunities for the residents who live here. They would just need to display their parking permit to park between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. We would continue to protect the neighborhood from most employee parking and most commuter parking. Importantly, the residents who live on Orchard Street, William Street, who can never park on their street because it's too narrow, would now have an equal chance as other residents to be able to park on one of our public streets. Removing 6 of our meters, right, to sort of use that space better and more efficiently. And, I would just want to sort of highlight that this is a parking restriction. Nothing's ever permanent with parking restrictions. If we find that something doesn't work very well, we could tweak it, we could change it. When we put in other parking districts around the city, I think it's gone pretty well overall. We've had a couple streets change the restriction in one way or another. We're able to address it through traffic council pretty quickly. The residents who live on Charles Bank Road and Nonantum Place already have resident permits, right? So those permits they'd still continue to use those permits. And the other streets, if this is approved, would be able to go and get the permits. It's all managed by the Traffic Bureau over in the police station in West Newton. And this is the same as every resident permit anywhere in the city. By ordinance, it's $25 a year for each sticker, like the resident sticker that gets affixed to the windshield. You could also get 2 free visitor passes. Those are not stickers, but they're transferable placards that you just need to remember to use when you're parking between, let's say, 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., or else you might get a ticket. A lot of people don't even want to pay for the $25 sticker, and they just want to get their 2 free visitor placards, and that is, that's something that is allowable. And then I had mentioned Maple Street. So this is just an image of Maple Street with the cars parked on both sides, and the idea that we would be extending the no parking zone along the whole southern side of Maple Street. And then I just have several slides we don't have to go through this. This is all like just the technical language that we had to hold the item from the last meeting to flesh it out and like measure everything up. And this is actually what we would be voting on to change in our traffic and parking regulations. But that is the presentation, and I guess I'll go back to this main slide if we have comments. Isaac, you have your hand up already.
Yeah, David, I want you to keep talking. Can you show the parking utilization that we had last time? You did a little bit more observations. I think maybe some folks either are new to this, it might be like taking 30 seconds to go through it.
I have that slide, I think, that I stuck all the way down at the end just in case. Oh, here it is. This is it. So this is sort of before we did anything, we collected data on how many cars are parking on all these different streets, right? And so this is what we showed at the meeting last month. That I understand not everyone was at that meeting, but so this shows every street is in a column: Jefferson Street, Maple Street, Nonantum Place, Charles Bank Road, Russell Road, Orchard Street, Charles Bank Terrace. And it describes first the different parking restrictions, and that every single street has a different parking restriction. I tried to count the number of spaces on every street. There's none on Orchard Street, for example. There's 30 on Charles Bank Road, which would now be more because we would be removing the metered parking. And then I just counted, and I do live in the neighborhood, so I'm through there a lot, and I think that my counts are pretty representative of other times that I have been through these streets. So I did several observations, just counted the number of cars at different times. This was back in May, and calculated the utilization, how many cars, what percentage of spaces are being taken, as an average. So we see that Jefferson Street, only 20% of the spaces are utilized, and that's because it's a 1 hour limit. People can't park there very long. It's a low number. 20% is very low. No Nantum Place, 26% of the spaces I counted in my observations were used, so a low utilization. Charles Bank Road, also less than a quarter of the available spaces were taken. Russell Road, way too heavily parked up, right? There are no restrictions on the street. That's sort of how we started this whole discussion, that we have Russell Road, a dead-end street, highly utilized, because there's nowhere else for people to park, I think, in the neighborhood, if they don't have a permit. So I think they just go to Russell Road. And so then the Russell Road people don't have a place to park. So this was the data that we collected. So yeah, in addition to this data, we considered all the comments from the last meeting and the comments from previous, the previous years. So that's what you wanted to see, right, Isaac?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm going to try and go back to, okay, back up, all the way back up to here. Okay, so now we're going to open it up for public comment. And so if you could raise your hands, I see so far 2 people raising their hands. I'm first going to call in April Kabash. If you could just unmute yourself and then remind us your address.
So I live at the bottom of Russell Road at 9 Russell Road, and I'm not so sure about the number of spots where the permit parking will be allowed, because if people aren't squished in, there's really 4 at the top of the street and then another 2 below Charles Bank Terrace. So really there's 6 spaces to park properly. And what I would request is that if this plan proceeds, that the residents and guests of Russell Road be allowed to also park on Charles Bank Road, because we won't have enough places with what is there just on the one side of the street. And I think inevitably there will have to be some signage on the other side, because if people see that they can't park without a permit on the east side, then they're likely to park on the west side, and the street is really narrow. So that's going to be problematic.
Okay, so thank you for that comment. I have 2 thoughts. First of all, remember that after 11 a.m., you will not need a permit to park on Charles Bank Road. So if it is that Russell Road is all filled up, then Charles Bank Road probably would not be. And after 11 a.m., that would become available if this is what we go with. Also, if you live in a parcel that's on a corner, like this parcel right here is on the corner of Russell Road and Charles Bank Road. And I think maybe this one also. So if you live on a parcel on a corner, you could choose which street your permit would be for. So maybe the folks who live on Russell Road, but on a corner parcel, would be able to choose their permit as Charles Bank Road, where there are more spaces available. I see the next person, Rhonda O'Neill.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. We just need to know your address.
Okay. All right. I'm at on Nantum Place, and I've been in my house since 1983. And I want to say about 15 years ago, we had the same problem with the commuters, and we had this 2-hour parking, prohibited from 9 to 11 to try to deter the commuters from coming. and it didn't work, and that's why we went to permit parking. So I'm a little concerned about the 9 to 11, unless there's going to be patrols coming by and really monitoring this area, you know, as to who's parked here. So that's my one concern. When I heard about all of this, I'll be honest with you, I was opposed to all of it. I didn't want Nonantum Place to be part of this because we don't have access to the Charles Bank area, and I'll call it in the back, right? Because Charles Bank Road is a one-way street. So from my street, the only way to get back there to park is to, you know, go out onto Galen, go around the Circle of Death and go, you know, down to Charles Bank that way, or have to go down Nonantum Road and come back up Charles Bank. So we don't have access to any of that parking. Nobody on my street and probably on Jefferson Street is going to travel back there to park. So my concern is how many people from that area back there are going to want to come and park on my street when Nonantum Place is limited in the amount of parking it has. And a lot of our residents here don't have driveways. So they have to park on the street. So I'm not as opposed now. I will say that I do like, you know, what I'm looking at here, but and I'm willing to, you know, to see if it works again and what kind of impact it will have on our street. I guess we'll find out. But this commuter thing really troubles me, because if we don't have, I don't know who does, you know, the person who drives around in the car giving tickets, if somebody's not driving around looking to make sure, to let these commuters know you can't park here, and eventually they'll get the message, then it doesn't work. But I mean, I understand the problem with the people on in the back, that they don't have parking. I don't want it to affect our street, and then the people who live on our street can't park in front of their houses, and they have to, I don't know where they would go. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts about what you just said. So first of all, I want to make it clear what the permit is for. If you live on Charles Bank Road, you get a permit for Charles Bank Road, right? You don't get a permit to park on Nonantum Place. If you live on Nonantum Place, you have a permit for Nonantum Place, you know, not Charles Bank Road. So unless you live on the corners, right? So if you happen to live on Nonantum Place, right, maybe right here on the corner, you would be able to choose if you want to have your permit for Nonantum Place or for Charles Bank Road. It might be better on Charles Bank Road because now we'll have additional space right here where the meters would be removed, right? In terms of how easy is it to enforce? And I don't want to speak for the police. We have the police on the call. I think in general, when you have restrictions that are the same on all these different streets, it's got to be way easier for enforcement to come by. They need to come by between 9 and 11, look to see if you have a permit to park there. If you don't, you get a ticket. It's not like all different restrictions on Jefferson Street right now. They have to come and see if there's a car there, and then an hour later see if the car is still there because it's a 1 hour limit. It makes it really hard to enforce. So I think part of this is, you know, we have the goal of making it easier for the police to be, you know, our parking control, to be able to enforce this neighborhood. With commuters, you know, again, everything is not set in stone. Around Newton North, we started with a set of regulations. We found that some streets very, very close to the school continued to have student parking, and we were able to modify it as time went on. You know, at the same time, I guess I'll say that we don't have nearly as many commuters as we did before, which I think is a bad thing. You know, I think that we're all very lucky in Newton Corner that we have excellent public transit service still. We still have the express bus, even though they've been cut. We still, for now, have the express buses. that go into Boston, and we want people to use them and we want riders on them. And I think we all need to do our share. But at the same time, you know, we have meters that we've put in other places in Newton Corner that are long-term meters that people could park at. And you can't park until 11 a.m. I think most people, that wouldn't work if you're a commuter. So those are the thoughts I have so far, but we'll go on to the next person, Nick 1. So Nick 1, if you could hear me, if you could unmute,
Hi, can you hear me now?
we could hear you. We just need to know your address.
Nonantum Place. My name is Noel Blumenthal. I'm new to this, so I just want to understand a couple of quick things, not to monopolize any time. The purple areas that are restricted, the public can't park in any of those public areas, right? Only the green areas, no matter when, except unless you have a placard or you're a resident.
So the areas shown in red, these are the same areas on Nonantum Place shown in
I mean-
red. Where
I
you
mean
cannot-
purple.
Yeah, in
Purple.
red, you can never park. In
Right.
purple, right now, you need to have a permit to park there all week, you know, not weekends. So with this plan, like the other nearby streets, you would need to have a permit. If you live on Nonantum Place, you'd get a permit to park on Nonantum Place. You would need to display the permit to park there between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. After 11
Okay.
a.m., you don't need a permit anymore.
Okay, so the purple area, the public can't park, and only permitted parking for residents. That's
The public can park in any of these areas shown in purple after 11 a.m. So if you have visitors, or if you have, you know, service workers, or if someone's coming to visit the playground right there that this, you know, was funded and improved, they would be able to go there after 11 a.m.
okay. And the last question is, tradespeople like plumbers, electricians, between 9 and 11, were they to have the placard?
Well, between 9 and 11, if you have visitors and if you live on Nonantum Place, again, you could get a sticker to put on your car for $25 and you never have to remember to, you know, put it on your dash. Or you have the choice of getting 2 free visitor placards. So
Right, but-
every household would have a visitor placard, and if you have a service worker come, you would give them the placard. They would have to remember to use it if it's between 9 and 11 and then give it back to you. This is exactly the same that you have now. Right
Okay,
now, if you live on
understand.
Nonantum Place, you are entitled to get 2, you know, stickers and 2 free visitor permits. So that's not any different. The only thing that's different is that the signs will change. It won't say you need to have a permit to park all the time. It'll say you need your permit between 9 and 11 on this street and on other nearby streets.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next person I see is Susan A. Klein.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks, Sue Klein. I concur with a lot of what's been said. A couple of questions.
Can you just say your address? I'm sorry.
Sure, sorry, 12 Russell Road, I'm
Okay.
afraid. A couple of questions. When you've clarified a piece about the purple areas, every one is allowed to park all weekend, right? Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. Anyone
Yes.
can park there, correct? From my perspective, that's actually part of most of the challenge on Russell Road. People come and stay over a weekend. And so that impacts our ability to use those slots. That's one piece. Secondly, given where my house is, the whole idea of the flexibility, if it requires putting up those signs, that's like in the front of, it's literally a bit challenging in at least where I am, because it's right in front of our sidewalk, in like right near our property. It's not, unlike further up where it would be, which is not on anyone's property, which is a bit challenging, the disruption and what that looks like. And I think thirdly, I would concur with what I think it was Rhonda said, that, it does all depend on whether anyone's actually checking whether whether the cars are here or not. So just a couple of comments and thoughts on this, on it. I mean, it's been a lot of good work, but I just want to see how.
So just on your one comment about, I think that you're saying are you saying that the signs would be difficult to put in the area shown in green on the west side of Russell Road?
I'm saying the signs on the purple side, the green side, I probably respectfully disagree that we need them.
Well,
because
you're agreeing then that we don't need them.
on the
right?
green side, yeah, I'm sorry, respectfully disagreeing with my neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, I'm agreeing I don't think we need them.
So on the purple side, I think that there's a utility pole that we could post a sign on.
Okay. That's near 12 Russell Road, 12,
Yeah.
14 Russell Road.
So maybe we just only need one sign. We do have a traffic superintendent that's been working here for 27 years, figuring out where to post signs in the best places. So I think we could figure that out.
Okay.
Also, don't forget, if you have, if you have overnight guests on the weekend or something, and you live on Russell Road and you need to park, probably Charles Bank Road will have parking available to you on the weekend.
Yes, my
or
concern,
any of these other streets.
my concern is that people just park, if that is purple and anyone can park, we're still in the same place. We have people who just leave their car here over a weekend.
And if we find that it's a problem, these are sort of very similar restrictions that we have in all different parts of the city. In
Yeah.
general, the restriction is Monday through Friday.
Yes.
Around the schools, it's usually just school days. And then if it's not a school day, it's just open parking. It solves the most pressing problems, I think.
Okay.
But again, if you find like Saturdays, like all of a sudden you have just nowhere to park because it's all filled up with cars on Saturdays, we can come back and change something.
Great, thank you. And
Oh, I think you muted yourself.
sorry. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that we did get one email from a resident of 138 Charles Bank Road who was opposed to a lot of this, concerned about having too many permits become available on Charles Bank Road. So I wanted to mention that one email that we did get. We did notify all the residents in this neighborhood for the last meeting and for this meeting as well. But we only received the one email from 138 Charles Bank Road. I see Rahul Gupta. And you can unmute and just share your address.
I'm trying to, oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
we can hear
Sorry,
you
that's
now.
on my husband's setup here, so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for going over everything. I admit I jumped in between because I was putting other kids down, but I just wanted to, we were on the previous call last month as well, that we were impressed with how well it was ran and how informative it was. But unless I'm mistaken, I thought that the third option that was going to be proposed at this meeting was the neighborhood resident permit without access to the public at any windows of time, because of some of the people having concerns that if we open it up, like many have said here, that it might be open for abuse of people coming in from all around, whether commuters or people parking over the weekend and stuff. So is that something that was considered and dismissed, or is that something, I know you're saying we could go back and change it, but is there an option to start with like a lighter touch and open up the permits for everyone and see how it goes, and then expand it more? Like, is that something, or is that complicating?
Well, what I would say is, so what I remember.
Oh, I'm on Orchard Street. Sorry, I forgot to say 19 Orchard Street.
Right. So first of all, as a resident of Orchard Street, you have nowhere at all to be able to park right now.
Yeah.
You can't park on your street.
Right.
And you can't park on Charles Bank Road or anywhere. Right.
Yes, exactly.
So this is really geared toward residents like you to try
Yes,
to
and
make it more
my neighbors who are communicating with me now are really appreciative of this whole endeavor. Yeah.
So now I lost, what was I gonna say? Okay. So I don't think, what I remember from the last meeting was we had talked about the idea of having a 2-hour limit except by permit, and nobody liked that. They did not like the idea of having a 2-hour permit except by permit. So we talked about how on some other streets like Janet Road, off of Walnut Street, we switched them from after we put the bike lanes in on Walnut Street, and there were nowhere for the Walnut Street people to be able to park because Janet Road was restricted at all times. We changed Janet Road to be restricted only between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. You need a permit between, just like this. You need a permit 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Janet Road. A lot of those residents didn't like the idea of going from totally, only available to them at all times to needing a permit from 9 to 11. But in the end, we put it in, and I never heard anything after that. So it seems like it's worked. And in general, I would say in traffic council, we tend to try, the least restrictive things first. We've definitely done that around Newton North. And if we find that it's not working, and maybe this will work just fine, or maybe it'll work, maybe it might not, who knows exactly what'll happen. Maybe you'll start seeing more cars parking on Jefferson Street. So, because it's closer. So I don't really know, but nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. But, we've done this enough that we think it could work well, or it could be a first crack at it that we could adjust later if we need to. But why restrict something unnecessarily at the outset, right? So that's sort of our thinking. So thank you. Are any other members of the public would wish to raise their hand? I see we're joined by Councilor Gentile. Oh, I see we're joined also by Councilor Kelly. Okay, I don't see anyone else from the public that would wish to speak now. Oh, we do have one more hand. Oh, April Kabash.
Just a quick question. If this does pass, I'm just curious as to typical time frame for next steps and when we might expect to see this in place.
Okay, so after we close the public comment, we'll have a discussion and we'll see if we can get to a vote. And we would be voting on all this language here. If it does pass, we need to wait until November 6th. That's per ordinance. We need to wait for 20 days to see if there's any appeals, right? So every single vote that we take, we can't move forward with until we wait for the 20-day appeals period, whether it's a stop sign or anything. So same thing here. We usually don't get appeals. Maybe we'll get one appeal out of 100 items or something, but it is possible that we could have an appeal. And if an appeal is filed, then this item is frozen and it's immediately transferred over to City Council. And it would be the Public Safety and Transportation Committee of City Council that would be discussing it again. Everyone would be notified again, and then they would be taking a final vote. If there's no appeal, then after November 6th, we would start to post the new signage. We might need to order the new signage. We would need to call DigSafe if there's new poles that need to be inserted into the ground and get their okay that there's no underground, utilities. They usually are pretty quick. So probably by mid-November, I would think you'll start to see the new signage on the street. When you see the new signage, that is the indication to the residents that they now can go and buy a permit or get their free visitor permits from the traffic bureau in West Newton, in the police station. The residents of Charles Bank and the residents of Nonantum Place that already have permits would not need to get a new permit. And so also remember that we're now going to be, near the end of 2024. And so the permits throughout the city, except for high school students, throughout the city, all of these permits expire on December 31st. So it might make sense to just wait until January, or maybe the 2025 permits will start to be sold in December. So that would be the indication. Wait until the signage is posted, then decide what makes sense in terms of if you should get probably the 2025 permit. Does that answer your question? Okay. So we have the last hand up from Glenn. Oh, we have another one too. So Glenn, we just need to know your name, your full name.
Yeah,
and your
Glenn O'Neill, and a longtime resident of Nonantum Place. And I just have two comments, David. I've never been on one of these calls, and we were addressed by one of our neighbors with a lot of consternation about what was going on this. And I think I have to just thank you for the time and attention you put into all of this research. This is more complex than I even imagined, with all the different competing interests and so forth. So I really appreciate you did a terrific job with this. And it seems like you have a comprehensive plan that I can certainly support. Number two, I really appreciate you getting rid of those parking meters along the pike. Nobody goes there because it's like, when are you going to go there, to put your money in and keep coming back. And it doesn't help anybody when there's a party or, but taking those 6 or so meters out will really help tremendously, especially when we have a lot of people come to that neighborhood park, which is across the street from our home. It gives you the overflow parking that you need. So I really thank you for that as well.
Thank you very much. Right now we're planning to keep these 2 meters, the last 2 that are long-term meters. We changed them to become long-term meters, and we were thinking, maybe if there's a commuter that's in the know, they would be able to park there. And there used to be a dentist office right there. I'm not sure if there's even a need for these 2 meters anymore. So, but for now, we're keeping them there. But it doesn't mean, well, I think we should keep an eye on those 2 meters to see if maybe those also can be converted into into a purple zone as well. Thanks again. So I see Rihanna, can't read your last name. Is it Benson? Benson.
Yes, that is me. I'm a resident of Orchard Street, and I do really appreciate the time you've taken to go over this. I mean, your work is just incredible. I could never do any of this, but I do appreciate it. And as a resident of Orchard Street with 0 parking at all, it would be, obviously very beneficial for us as homeowners to be able to park on Charles Bank. Our house kitty corners Charles Bank, so it would, we're right on the corner. So even some of our house is on Charles Bank. So it does make sense. My question is if for some reason it doesn't get approved, or if there's an appeal, are we still going to have an option to scale it back? So it's just neighborhood or just resident parking? Is that so we can still get parking because we have 0 parking? So I'm just wondering if that would.
Well, I mean, let's see how it goes. I'm hopeful that it'll pass and we won't have to start again with something else. But if it doesn't pass, I guess we'll cross that bridge right away.
Yeah, there is public comment at the PS&T meetings when traffic council items are appealed.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, if that's what you meant. Yes, so if this does get appealed, it goes to Public Safety and Transportation, and I'll be presenting exactly this again, and public comment will probably be allowed. It always has been in the past, and we might end up in the same place anyway, just later on, might be delayed, or maybe there won't be an appeal. All right, so I want to thank everybody for their comments in this meeting, the last meeting, over the years, and we do have I think there's 4 members of traffic council on the call and 3 city councilors. So if there's any comments from any members of traffic council or city council, now's the time. Okay, and I don't see any. So, we do have all this language that I measured everything twice to make sure that we get the specific measurements, hopefully as accurate as it can be, to update our traffic and parking regulations. That's actually what we'd be voting on, all this precise language. Okay, so we do have one. Do we have any? Maybe not. Okay, so we have this language in front of us. This would be, if we go to a vote, it would be TPR 951. I had one little edit that I recognized for the members of traffic council that have the TPR language. I realized that there's more than one Russell Road in Newton. There's one in Newton Corner and there's one in West Newton. So just on this page, where is it? Right here, where it says Russell Road, I would make a small edit and just say Russell Road, Newton Corner, so that we're referring to this Russell Road with this set of regulations. Other than that, would anyone like to make a motion? I guess I can make a motion to approve the language of TPR 951 for TC 2424. Any last comments from anyone? Okay, great. So Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0 TPR 951.
All right, thank you all very, very much. I think this is great. And we'll wait until after November 6th to see what happens with many things, including this particular TPR language. And we are ready to move on to our next item. All right, so our next item is TC 924. This is Sue Klein, 12 Russell Road, Newton Corner, requesting a discussion and a possible change to the parking regulations on Russell Road. This item has been held twice. We heard it on April 11th, and then we heard it again last month on September 12th. Obviously, it started a bigger discussion, which we just talked about and we just voted on. So there's no reason to keep this item around anymore. So I would make a motion to NAN this particular item. We'll take no action on TC 924. It's already been woven into the vote that we just took. All right, any comments? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Ms. Schoenfelder.
Aye.
Okay, that's voted. No action necessary, 4-0.
Next item then is TC 4024, Adrian Ayala, traffic engineer, requesting to add a parking prohibition on portions of the west side of Jackson Road in the vicinity of the newly constructed neck downs at 150 Jackson Road. All right, so this is the area of Jackson Road with the new Lincoln Elliott School being built right here between Pearl Street and Washington Street. Here's a view of it. We see that part of the approved site plan of the new school includes these bump outs. Did I call them neck downs? They're bump outs, I meant to say. There's 2 of these that are these that have sort of bumped out into the street, narrowed the street. We used to have enough space on Jackson Road to allow parking on both sides, but with these bump outs here, we can no longer allow safe parking on both sides of a section of Jackson Road. So that, and here's the view of the other bump out. So we are now in the position of proposing a new parking restriction on this section of Jackson Road. The area shown in red. And that is what we will be proposing. No parking anytime along this section, and then ending right here as shown in this sign. So it's it would be no parking. We measured it from Pearl Street. It would begin, you'd still be allowed to park on Jackson Road up until you're 425 feet south of Pearl Road. Then we would have to prohibit the parking all the way down to Wilshire Road and 50 feet beyond. So that's the presentation. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Any comments from Traffic Council? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the language of 952. That's the language shown on this slide, page 27, to add this new restriction on Jackson Road. Any last comments? Okay, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Ms. Schoenfelder.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0 TPR 952.
Yeah, thank you. All right, our next item is TC 4124. Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, and Commissioner of Public Works Josh Morse requesting a trial which will allow for various changes to the parking and circulation on streets near the new Lincoln Elliott School at 150 Jackson Road and the building at 191 Pearl Street to be used as a swing space school. It is expected that various changes will be necessary on nearby neighborhood streets in order to facilitate the opening of these schools, which is currently scheduled for September 2025. Each trial will be examined and specific docket items will subsequently be prepared as needed in order for Traffic Council to vote and make permanent changes to our city ordinance, Chapter 19, the TPR. Okay, so this is the area that we're talking about doing a trial in. Starting in September 2025, the Lincoln Elliott School, which is located right here now at 191 Pearl Street, is going to be moving next door. We can all see the construction happening at 150 Jackson. So this school is now going to be down here. Lincoln Elliott will be at 150 Jackson. And temporarily, the existing Lincoln Elliott School at 191 Pearl Street is going to be used as a swing space, similar to the swing space that we used in the past when we had the car school on Nevada Street. So this is going to be a swing space. Horace Mann is going to move over in September 2025, the same time that this new Lincoln Elliott School is going to open. So in September 2025, we're going to have two schools side by side, and then of course the Jackson School, the private school further down. This swing space school, we understand, is only going to be used for 1 year during the construction of the Horace Mann School on Nevada Street, and then they'll be moving back. So for a period of time, we're temporarily going to be needing to make some changes to accommodate all the buses, the blue zones, the staff parking in this neighborhood. Right now, we've started to talk about what we think is going to have to happen. We know that there's going to be buses coming over, busing the Horace Mann students, all of them, into this swing space school. So there's going to be, I think, 6 or 7 buses that are going to be locating on Jackson Road. We know that the blue zones that are currently in place on Pearl Street and on Jackson Road that serve the current Lincoln Elliott School are not going to be needed to be used as blue zones anymore. So those will need to be changed. And, new parking regulations on Jackson Road and on a portion of Pearl Street abutting the school. We know that, we're pretty sure right now that these changes will need to be made. And we also think that there might be other changes that we'll find that we need to make quickly. When we have more staff parking from two schools, trying to park in the neighborhood on these neighborhood streets. For example, on Wilshire Road, maybe right now you could park on both sides of Wilshire Road and it sort of works. But when we for a year have even more parking on the street, we might find that we need to restrict parking temporarily, right? During this trial period, during the time that we have the swing space, not necessarily make a permanent change, but we would need to react quickly and put in new restrictions. We don't know all the restrictions that we think that might be needed, but we want to be able to approve this trial so that the DPW will be able to quickly respond to changes. And we think that this is the fastest, best way to do it through a traffic council trial. Then in the end, this trial, when the swing space school is no longer being used at 191 Pearl Street, the trial could end, everything could go back to how it is now, unless we want to make some permanent changes, which would need to be specifically docketed, notified, and discussed. So that is why we docketed this item, and our recommendation is to hold this item to be able to have a long-term trial to make these various changes in this neighborhood. So that's what we have. I'll open it up for public comment. So what we're voting on right now is a trial to make temporary changes as needed. Any comments? Councilor Leary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kozis. I really appreciate that this is being discussed because we do know that we need to be very thoughtful about parking with those two schools so close together. One thing I remember from the Carr School was that they really worked on making sure that the students were all in buses and really discouraged parents from dropping off and that worked really well. It really helped to minimize the number of personal cars that were going in there. So I appreciate having this discussion, and it's going to be very important for the neighborhood because I was always concerned. Plus, we have the new senior center there too, which doesn't seem to generate all that much traffic, but it's still it's going to be a much busier area than it has been. So I'll continue to follow this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you remember for the Carr School, we actually closed Nevada Street because we had so many buses there. And then we had to issue permits to be able to access the closed street. There's no way we can close Pearl Street, right? We can't even entertain that, or Jackson Road. So, but there is a plan to get as many of these students on the bus as possible. All of them would be eligible to take the bus over. We would be removing the blue zones to, not encourage people to be driving over and using the blue zones at 191 Pearl Street. I think we would probably be using those blue zones as staff parking. So, the conversation will continue. There's some things that we know that we want to do probably in the summer, right? Like paint over those blue zones, make that parking, figure out where the buses are going to be, the bus zone, right? So, and then other things, like I said, we'll figure out as needed. Any other comments? All right, anyone like to make a motion to hold?
Just, Larry might be trying to, raise his hand.
Larry, are
Yeah.
you on the call? I see you,
Hi,
Larry, but,
David.
oh, hey, Larry, how are you?
Good, thank you. I was just wanted to maybe make a suggestion because that affects in front of 177 Jackson Road with the no parking anytime. That would affect in front of my home. Maybe alternative could be a no parking Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 school days. I don't know if that would help.
So Larry, are you talking about the previous item that we just voted
Yes,
on?
yes, I was
Okay.
on the phone and I couldn't get
Okay.
through. Yeah, so I'm talking about the previous with the west side, no parking anytime. 50 feet after Wiltshire, west side.
Yeah,
So,
right. I don't
so I
know,
was just saying,
Isaac, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just saying maybe an alternative to the no parking anytime could be no parking Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, school days only. I know that doesn't do the 24-hour if you feel it's unsafe with parking on both sides.
Yeah, I think that that's the issue, Larry, that it became too narrow to allow parking. So if someone's parking on the southbound side, they're in the travel lane. They're in the travel lane. We do have, we think there'll be blue zones across the street. So those would be available. What the blue zones are is free available parking at all times,
Yeah.
except during pickup and drop off.
Pick up and drops off, right?
Yeah. Other than that, it's free unrestricted parking, but it would be across the street.
Yes, and that would be available across the street from my home
Right.
would all be available.
That would be available.
All right.
Or further down past Wilshire,
Yes,
or closer to Pearl Street.
closer to Pearl. Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Any other comments? Okay, did anyone make a motion to hold?
No.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to hold? Okay, I'll make a motion to hold this item. This would be a long-term trial. Any last comments? Okay, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Okay, that's held 4-0.
Thank you. So our next item is TC 3724. Counselors Gentile, Laredo, Oliver, Greenberg, Larry, Grossman, and Baker requesting the establishment of a safety zone on a section of Waverly Avenue near Burr Park. So safety zones, 20-mile-an-hour limit at all times. These were approved not too long ago by the state. Municipalities like Newton and every municipality in Massachusetts, now we have the ability to approve safety zones on our local streets without MassDOT approval. Every other speed limit, except for school zones, need MassDOT approval. Any sort of regulatory speed limit, this is the only one that we are able to adopt independently. They're not to be used in place of school zones, and there are requirements that we always look to. So safety zones are intended to be used in certain areas where we have vulnerable road users, like parks, senior citizens, or senior centers, daycare facilities, schools, hospitals. And also there's a requirement that a safety zone should be at least a quarter mile long, and with a crosswalk. So over the past couple of years, we've, several different requests for safety zones have come to Traffic Council. We've approved them. We have all of these so far. And now there's a request for a new one on Waverly Avenue, near the Burr Park. So we took a look at it. We found that it does meet the requirements of a safety zone. It does have the land use that we need. We could develop one that is over a 1/4 mile long. And so we are recommending that we do approve a safety zone on Waverly Avenue, starting at Fremont Street and ending at Nonantum Street. So it's about 1,500 feet long. It's also, very close to Bigelow Middle School and an area where students cross to be able to get to school and to the park. It's also near a daycare center, right near Burr Park. So we are recommending approval. We would, if approved, we would be adding signage that looks like this. This is near Tremont Street, safety zone, speed limit 20. And then another one near Nonantum Street. So again, our recommendation is to approve, and we have the language to vote on. I wanted to open it up to any public comment first, and then we can see if there's any questions among the Traffic Council members. Let's see. Councilor Gentile.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
So I also just want to mention that we're joined by Tim Delgrand. Tim lives at 96 Arlington Street, which is off of Waverly in this area, but his driveway is on Waverly. And I've known Tim for a number of years, and periodically he would make me aware of an accident that happens on this stretch. And it's gotten to the point now where he thought that there should be some kind of action taken. So I followed up, and Isaac was kind enough to come out and spend some time with us there. The problem is when you're coming down Waverly towards Tremont, it's kind of it's a subtle, but there's an abrupt curve as you get by Burr Park to the left. And because you're going downhill and it's a pretty wide road, I think what happens is that some people, misjudge the curve. And there's been several accidents over the years. The last one, Mr. Delgrand was, cutting hedges on his driveway, and the person just missed him and took out a pretty large tree at the house next to the driveway. And I know Tim probably has pictures of it. It was a pretty serious accident. And when we were out there that day, I mean, you're standing on the sidewalk, and the cars, as they come down and get to that curve in the road, they're coming pretty fast and coming right at you. And of course, most of them navigate it, but it's pretty clear that if you could get people to just slow down 5 or 10 miles an hour, it would make for a much safer stretch of road. So we talked about some different possibilities, and Isaac suggested that we might want to consider the safe zone. The Burr Park, as you pointed out already, David, is right there. The school is there. So the one good thing about the safe zone is, from a financial perspective, is it doesn't cost, it costs next to nothing to put it in. So to me, for all those reasons, it made a lot of sense. And so we docketed it. I asked that the Ward 1 and Ward 7 councilors were made aware of what we were suggesting. And I'm just here tonight to support your recommendation.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor Gentile. And I should also mention, we got an email today from Councilor Baker, who wanted to go on record letting us know that he also supports the establishment of the safety zone. Councilor Leary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kozis. I'm also a co-docketer on this and I'm fully support. I also wanted to just note that the Public Facilities Committee did approve a traffic calming measure at the intersection of Franklin and Waverly, which is at the very start of that safety zone. And I actually think that's going to be to our advantage to encourage cars to slow down. That's at the where you're really sloping down, and people pick up speed. And as Councillor Gentile noted, people often go too fast there. And I know this has been an issue for many years. So I fully support this measure and any other measures that we can do to make sure that traffic is slowing down and we're creating a safer environment for our residents and students.
So thank you very, very much, Councillor Leary. Any other comments? Any questions from or comments from Traffic Council members or other councillors?
Mr. Cousins, Isaac,
Oh,
do you
yes.
have the stats of how many crashes have occurred on there? Because I don't recall too many in that location. What is the? Do we know the exact amount?
I don't. Yeah,
Isaac.
yeah, I don't have the exact amount in that stretch. We can get that pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I can research it tomorrow. I just don't have off the
Yeah, I do know that one thing we were immediately able to do, because it didn't require traffic council approval, was to add back some chevron signs around the curve. What Nina, who has been our traffic superintendent, I think, nearing 30 years now, pointed out to me is that, they've sort of been on and off there throughout the years that they've been taken out. So that is some indication that there's been some recurring crashes, at least enough to struggle keeping the signs upright. But I definitely while we're on that topic, I encourage everyone to use 311 if you ever see any of those signs knocked down. And we'll be
Can you just say what a chevron is?
Yep. So the chevron sign is essentially a yellow warning sign with a dark arrow. There's usually two, essentially at the beginning and end of the curve in each direction. That's a pretty standardized approach on just alerting drivers to the presence of a roadway curve. These are retroreflective signs, so in the dark, car headlights hit them, and it really shines back at the driver. So we're hoping they'll stay upright as well as the safety zone that hopefully gets approved and that things improve overall.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Delgrand, I take it you live in the corner of Arlington and Waverly, probably one of these two houses?
Actually, we're at 96. We're a few houses in, but our driveway enters from Waverly Ave to the back of our property. So thank you for the opportunity. Just to address the issue, I've been a resident since 2000. My wife, 51 years. She was gone for 10 years in a neighboring town. In terms of the number of reported accidents versus incidents, for example, this on the 5th of October, so 2 Saturdays ago, a vehicle coming down the hill screeched its brakes, ended up on the sidewalk just above our driveway again. Another car behind it pulled up, asked if he was okay, and the guy yelled out, "Oh yeah, I just missed the road." So I can't tell you over the years, hubcaps, parts of cars, side view mirrors that I've picked up. I know of at least 3. My wife thinks there's been more times that the wrought iron fencing abounding the Burr Park has had to be repaired. Our neighbor just down below us, that's the second incursion of a vehicle into her property. The car actually went through 3 properties and it bedded itself into a large tree that had to be removed. The house below that, the house has actually been hit in the past. In another incident, the car drove into, she has a driveway that goes, her parking's underground, was embedded into the driveway. So there's been a series of accidents. And again, the near misses, the breaks. I reached out to 40 residents who are part of this area that would be impacted. I've heard from 16 directly, either through writing or verbally, all in support of this. No one has directly contacted me opposing the proposal. So we thank you for the good work. We strongly recommend that we do it. This last incident, I walked away slightly bloodied for what occurred. We're fortunate. It was a week after school closed for the summer session. It was a little before 8 o'clock in the morning. We've got to do something. We've got kids walking to school. And I would just remind everyone, we put in a manual operated pedestrian light at the intersection of Arlington and Waverly. That's about a 50-50 proposition. And Mr. Gentile mentioned the serpentine nature of the road up the hill. You really can't see that the intersection light. And we have kids who not only going to Bigelow, they're going over to Underwood, they're going to our local churches. So we strongly support it. We hope we do something, and thank you for the good work.
Thank you for that comment. I see Barbara Oppenheimer. If you'd like to unmute and just say your address for the record.
Yes, hi, I'm Barbara Oppenheimer. I live at 116 Waverly Ave next door to Tim, who just spoke. Thanks for all your hard work on this. So we live in that area where the cars come off sometimes. So I'm pleased to hear about the safety zone. I think that's a great idea. And I'm particularly happy about the Franklin project, because I think that is going to slow people down even more. So I was really happy that that came to be. The Chevron signs, which have been up off and on over the years, we've lived here for 40 years now. They fall down more than they stay up. People hit them, the plow, particularly who plows the Burr Park driveway. As they bring the snow out, it plows into the sign and the sign falls down almost every winter. So I don't know about, they're right in front of our house, on our berm or on the city's berm in front of our house. Maybe we just need to make sure they're in a slightly different place than that, so that doesn't keep happening.
Yeah, definitely a great point. I will just sort of reiterate the 311 point that I made. I think not only does that give us a quick response ability, it also documents the occurrence, and that can also be helpful. We do note patterns of signs in certain areas coming down often enough, especially through that system, which logs and helps us track those type of patterns. So definitely please feel welcome to use that 311 system. It's mobile, online, however you'd like. Shouldn't take too long to report that a sign is knocked down.
I'm happy to do that. I do think that where you place it's going to be kind of key to not me having to use 311 all the time.
Fair enough.
Okay, so just as you think about that, the plow comes right out at it, and every time it gets bent, and then we're back to 311. So if it's just over a little bit, I think it might be better.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. And thank you for all these comments. We do have the language that we could vote on today. Would anyone like any comments, or would anyone like to make a motion? All right, I'll make the motion then to approve the language of TPR 953 for TC 3724 to insert the safety zone between Tremont Street and Nonantum Street. And we would, again, need to wait. If this is approved, we just need to wait until after November 6th to make sure that it's not appealed. I don't expect an appeal for this item, but we can't post the signs until after November 6th. Any last comments? Okay, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Ms. Schoenfelder.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0, TPR 953.
Okay, great. And we're going to go on to our last item. And I do see that we're joined now by.
Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Gentile. Have a good night. I did notice that we are joined by Mitch Fishman, our citizen rep. Mitch, were you going to vote on this last item or Margot? And you're muted.
Margot, why don't you vote on it? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So our last item is TC 3424. Elijah Chavanov, 131 Farwell Street, requesting to restrict parking on both sides of the block of Farwell Street between North Street and Joseph Road. Note that this petition does not request to change the parking regulations on any other portion of Farwell Street, only to further restrict parking on the east side of the block of Farwell Street between North Street and Joseph Road. Okay, so we've talked about Farwell Road multiple times at Traffic Council and at the Public Safety and Transportation Committee recently. New parking regulations were approved back in October of last year, a year ago. There used to be no restrictions on either side of Farwell Street. Last year we did approve the parking restrictions on the west side of Farwell Street. This was after several discussions and input from the fire department. Here's a video that we played last year when we had parking on both sides of Farwell Street. The buses, there's school buses that drive down the street, couldn't get through sometimes. We can see here that a fire engine was not able to get through either. So that was why last year we added this restriction on this whole section of Farwell Street that's shown in red. That's in place. That's in place now. This item that was docketed is only asking to add this additional restriction that we show in red on this first block of Farwell Street on the east side, between North Street and Joseph Road. Here's a view of this area. It's 20 feet wide. Again, we already have a restriction on one side. This is asking to restrict the the east side as well. So already restricted on the west side, this would be an additional restriction on the east side. So I wanted to have public comment. We could vote to deny this request, or we could vote to approve this request. And we have the language to vote on if we want to approve the request. But I wanted to open it up for public comment at this point to hear from the residents. And I see that, let me see. I see Mr. or Miss Chavanov.
Yes.
And we just need
Hello.
to know your address, please.
My address is 131 Farwell Street. So I live right there where the red car is, in that picture. So the reason why we brought this up is because on the very corner of North Street and Farwell Street, there's a lot of driveways, so people don't generally park there. So now with this part restricted and people generally don't park on North Street, what happens is that people park right in front of 131 and 129 Farwell Street. And oftentimes it's not a car, sometimes it's the gardeners and people parking trucks and bigger vehicles. So when we attempt to, so it's right between those houses on the other side of the street. So anytime I try to leave the driveway leftward, or my neighbor who's also on the call tries to leave to the right, to take his kid to daycare or anything else. We don't really have the ability to do that. So we kind of have to either go around, make a U-turn, or do something else to make that turn, or drive over the sidewalk, which is generally a bad idea. So that's kind of the background of why we asked for this restriction.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Jovanov. And I see Sharon, you have your hand up. If you could just share your full name and your address.
Yeah, my name is Sharon Hughes, and I live at 50 Joseph Road. That's the corner of Farwell and Joseph. And I was not particularly in favor of restricting parking on the original parking restriction, because I didn't really see that it was a problem. I really don't see that there's a problem parking on the side that the request is to restrict parking on right now. Nobody parks there. Landscapers occasionally park there. They're there for about 15 minutes, and they're going to park there no matter how many signs you put up, because they already park on the other side of the street and ignore the signs. But they're also live parking, so if there was an emergency, they can get out of the way. When I got the notice for this meeting, I didn't really understand what the issue was, but I made a point of, for the last 14 days, going out there 4 times a day and taking a picture. And at the same time each day. And the only time I saw any cars there at all was on October 5th. It was a Saturday, and there were 2 cars parked. There was one on one side of my driveway and one on the Joseph Road side of my driveway. I think there was some sort of an affair going on in the neighborhood, because there were also cars around the corner on Joseph Road that are not normally there. The 2 cars on Farwell Street, I don't know what time they got there, because I wasn't home a lot of that afternoon. They were there when I got there home at 6 o'clock, and they were gone at 9 o'clock and at 10 o'clock. And that's the only time in 2 weeks, and I've got pictures if anybody wants them, that there was any car parked on that side of the street. So I don't understand why we would restrict parking. I mean, I have a driveway over there. I have a walkway to my back door over there. And there just aren't a lot of people who park there. And I just don't understand the need to restrict parking for anybody. And I haven't noticed either Ilya or I haven't noticed anyway them having problems getting in and out of their driveways. It doesn't make sense to me. We already have all those signs on the other side of the street, which at least you had utility poles to put them up on. On the side that is being proposed, there are no utility poles. There are 2 trees that you can see in that picture. I would hate to see you put signs in the trees. I don't think it's good for them. But I'd also hate to see a row of poles and signs that are frankly pretty unattractive and I think pretty unnecessary.
Thank you very, very much for that comment. Another hand I see is Dimitri Paccioni.
Yeah, correct. So, my name is Dimitri Paccioni. So I'm from 99 North Street. So that's the very first house of Street the Light house on the right. So already one side of this street prohibited for parking. So if you also prohibit, if you also parking on the second side, you basically will not have any place to park on Farwell Street next to our house. So it will be really not convenient for us. Yes, and I totally support Sharon. So I don't see any reason why we should restrict parking on the second side of the street.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Okay. We're going to close the public comment period then, and we're going to move into a discussion among traffic council members and city councilors And I guess I'd begin just, usually we in traffic council, we allow parking on a public way unless there's a strong safety reason that we see. And then we would look to restrict it. And that's what we did, last year. We felt that it was important to restrict parking on the west side. We saw that the buses couldn't get through. We had complaints that the buses were stuck. We saw that the fire trucks couldn't get through. And so we were glad to restrict the parking on that side. I mean, I think it's less important to restrict the parking on the east side. Like we heard from some of the residents, we would need to add signs if we're going to be restricting parking. And there are no utility poles, so we would be needing to put new poles in the ground, probably in between the trees, and restrict parking on both sides of a street that is 20 feet wide and can accommodate parking on one side. So that's sort of my immediate reaction, which is why the recommendation is either to deny it or approve it based on comments that we hear at this meeting. Mitch.
So, so can you get the picture back up there? The existing condition?
You mean this?
Yeah. So I guess I was trying to understand the the petitioner's comment about coming out of the driveway. Is it that cars extend beyond into the driveway, or they're on the edge of the driveway? They don't
No,
abide
we're
by the
talking about
5 foot?
across, Mitch, it's across the street. It's on this side of the street.
So
Parking
which
is already restricted on this side.
Oh, so that's
So
it's
we
that
would be
side of
looking
the
to
street.
restrict on
I
this
got
side,
you.
opposite side.
Yeah. So where is the I guess the question I had for the petitioner is what is the situation that is a problem? That's the question.
Mr. Javanov.
Yeah, thank you. So the problem is that when there's a car parked that there next to the tree where the arrow points at, it blocks most of the roads. So when I'm leaving my driveway, and I'm trying to turn left, so if that red car tries to go out and left, there's just not enough room to actually make that turn. So I have to either drive over the sidewalk or I need to go to the right and then get to the North Street, which is usually full, and somehow make a 3-point turn or something like that in order to go around the car. And for what it's worth, for the frequency of how often this happens, I understand that if there's a picture taken at the exact same time every day, and there's no cars at that exact same time, that probably means that nobody parks at that time on that side. I would say that once in every 4 days or so, when we try to leave the driveway, we have a problem leaving that way. And I think it's less of a problem. And my neighbor is on the call as well. He should be able to speak as well. It's even more problem for him because he can't make a right turn if there's a car there. So he has to go all the way around down to the Cheesecake Creek and try to go that way. And especially if he's trying to go towards Walton, that's basically going around the whole block just to be able to exit when there's a car parked there. So that's kind of where the problem is. And it might not be as clear on this picture here, but the cars would usually extend because they don't hop on the grass there. They extend almost halfway into the street. So there's really not that much room once the cars are parked on that side. So that's kind of where it is. If red car tries to make left turn or the other driver tries to make a right turn, that's where the problem is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. William Wang.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is William and I live in 129 Farwell Street. So I'm the other driveway that's beside the right car that currently doesn't have a car. So as my neighbor said, oftentimes so it's about once every 3 days, probably 3-4 days. around the same frequency, I would have a problem trying to turn right. From what I've noticed, it's not a set time through the day, during the day. It could be any time throughout the day that this happens. So in that case, either I would have to drive down Joseph Street, or I gotta go turn left and go around the neighborhood in order to get out. So it is pretty inconvenient for us, but I understand the other concerns from the other residents as well. So
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pestroni. And you just need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I live at 99 North Street, which is basically next house to next driveway to this driveway with red car, and I think we never had this problem. So that also, so maybe that's really a problem of this section of the road across red car, but on our side, on our section of the street, we never had any problems of turning right or left when we go out of the driveway.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Sharon again. Yeah, go ahead.
I specifically took the pictures at approximately the same time every day, so I wouldn't impose any bias on the issue. And, not go out and just take pictures when there weren't cars. But I'm on that street a lot. I'm retired, so I don't work. I walk the dog 3 times a day. The only other time I saw a car on Farwell Street in these 2 weeks, when I've been pretty observant, was yesterday. And it was somebody who had pulled over and was parked the wrong way on the street. And we had a brief conversation because she wanted to know why I was taking a picture of her car. But she was only there to make a phone call. Other than that, as I said, the only cars I saw in 2 weeks were Saturday night, October 5th. And I understand Ilya and William, but it seems to me, never mind, I don't even want to go there. I just don't see a reason to restrict parking all day, every day, when it's very seldom used, and to force people to find someplace else to park is just, doesn't make sense to me. And doesn't make sense to me to have those unattractive no parking signs. The trees look nice. I'd hate to see poles in between them.
All right, so thank you all for all of your comments. We're going to close the public comment period and go to members of Traffic Council. And I'll just start by saying that, here at Traffic Council, we do try for the least restrictions when we can to allow parking on our public streets whenever we think it's safe and fine to do so. It's a 20-foot street. We do have a lot of streets throughout the whole city that allow parking, on the street, that it would be across from people's driveways. So this is not unique at all, that we would have a situation where parking sometimes happens across from someone's driveway. I don't see anything unusual in this case. So I'll leave it there and see what other members of Traffic Council think. I see Isaac has your hand up. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up a similar point. I can sympathize with the frustration, but I do think about other times that this has come up, specifically with concerns of not cars specifically next to a driveway, but across from a driveway. And we know how difficult it is to get the right measurements and the right language down for TPRs. And that's why we try to generally take block by block or street by street approaches. And so when we start chasing, short segments of streets across from driveways where some folks have issues and some folks don't, it does become difficult. So I I'm not quite ready to set that precedent. I would also sort of lean towards rejecting this respectively.
Okay, thank you, Isaac. And I did want to point out, if we do vote to deny this request, we have our 20-day appeals period. This particular street has had several appeals. So we have the ability, if someone feels very strongly that we are making the wrong vote, if we vote to deny it, we have through November 6th to appeal decision. If it's appealed, if this denial is appealed, it still would be transferred over to the Public Safety and Transportation Committee for them to take a final vote. Mitch.
So I guess I was just wondering, and it's more directed to Isaac. So that restriction would extend to north. And I guess I'm wondering, would that have, if there was a restriction there, would it have any benefit on traffic at that intersection? Does that intersection have any particular issues with accidents or congestion? I mean, is there any benefit of doing that to address any issues at that intersection?
I believe no, because I believe the last round of restrictions here addressed those issues. Before we did hear concerns of school buses and fire trucks struggling to get through. I think as long as one side's prohibited, that issue is resolved. And I am of the belief that it's not necessary to restrict both.
And beyond that, I think that if we, if you have an occasional parked car on a street, it's not going to make the traffic speed up. It would probably do the opposite. If we have a situation where there's no cars ever, on either side of the street, what is there to slow down traffic? So I think that there might be a benefit of occasionally having a car in this spot to maybe slow down the cars turning off of North Street and into the neighborhood streets. Does that sound right, Isaac?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Any other comments from the traffic council members or city councilors? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? All right, I will make a motion to deny this request for the additional parking restriction. Again, we have the 20-day appeals period, but we'll see how this plays out with the motion to deny. Are there any other comments? All right, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder.
Aye.
Okay, that's denied 4-0.
All right, and that is the end of our business for tonight. Thank you all. Our next meeting, I think, is going to be on November, what is it? November 14th, right?
14th.
Danielle? All right.
November 14th.
Very good. Okay, thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Night.